What's up, guys? Dan Theory back here again at Theory BFF. I'm here to give a special edition of the Start and Sits for the week. If you guys didn't listen to yesterday, haven't listened to the podcast, Nick and I are switching because I'm going out of town beginning tomorrow. We head up into Minnesota to visit some friends and family. We'll also be attending the Vikings and Ravens game, so fuck yeah there. I don't know what Nick normally does for these, but I'm going to give you guys, for the most part, at least for QB, running backs, receivers, and tight ends, two starts and two sits that I think. They're not super deep or not super obvious, at least for hopefully some of them. So we'll jump into that here in just a second. I just want to give a quick shout out to my co-hosts at Nick Sparts with the Z not an S and at Hot BFF with two P's. Also, you can like and subscribe on the show, and also find us on Twitter at BeerfieldFF, on Instagram at BeerfieldFF. Hopefully, I'll be doing more of that on Instagram as the season winds down and into the off season. And on Facebook, Beerfield Fantasy Football. Website should be coming up soon, but please just continue to like and subscribe and keep giving us feedback. Also, you'll get Nick tomorrow doing his rendition of Anything Can Happen Thursday. Late Friday nights, early Saturday morning, Hopper will be releasing his DFS picks. He'll be out of town on a show, so it won't be up early Friday like it normally is. Then Nick will be back on again Saturday to do the ins and outs for injuries, and then you can catch up with them on Sunday doing their preview stuff or doing their live Q&A stuff on YouTube Live and things like that. So let's just jump into the starts and sits for me, not Nick, because I want to have a little bit of fun too. So we're gonna start with quarterback starts. First one, Matt Ryan. Right now he's your QB 25. It's fucking gross, and we've kind of predicted this with a little bit of help from Mitchell Rentz, who also enlighten us on what quarterbacks have done after their MVP season. You saw last year with Cam. You're seeing it this year with Matt Ryan, who seems to get worse. But it's not just him, it's the offense. But they're playing against arguably the worst pass defense ever. I'm talking about they could be worse than the Saints of a couple years ago and the Cowboys of a couple years ago as well. New England has allowed a 300 passer in every game this season. In 5 out of the 6 games, they've allowed at least 2 passing touchdowns. And one of those, in the game they didn't allow one against, was against the Bucs, which saw a couple of them drop in the end zone. These quarterbacks include Alex Smith, Drew Brees, Cam Newton, Deshaun Watson, and Josh McCown. Also Jameis Winston, like I just mentioned before. Some of these guys are fantastic. Some of them are not. So you can see that even a bad quarterback like McCown can take advantage of this. A rookie like Watson, who was on the road when this happened, can go into New England, who has been typically really good against rookie quarterbacks, have himself a fantastic game. There's a get right game. It's this game. There's a get right team for quarterback. It's New England. I love Matt Ryan this week. He's my QB2. Next, Marcus Mariota. He's sitting at QB 16 on the season. He's my QB 5 or 6 for the week. They're playing against Cleveland. Pretty fucking terrible. But Mariota hasn't quite lived up to the hype that we kind of gave him going into the season with all these new weapons and roles. So that's been injuries, and not just to him, but just injuries overall to the receiving position. It's been a kind of weird system of ways that the Titans have kind of gone about running their offense. Not running the football enough, running it a shit ton, making Mariota throw a shit ton. But as we saw last week or Monday night against the Colts, Mariota exclusively played from the pocket and looked pretty good against an okay Colts secondary. They were a little bit healthier, but they're playing against Cleveland, which is a lot worse. They're going to look to run the football again, but Mariota's going to be able to have his time, to pick and choose where he wants to go. He may not give you a top 3 finish, but I can definitely see him giving you a QB1 finish. It's going to be where you get to see his passing floor, a little bit of a passing upside. He may not be completely healthy to run the football a whole lot, so he may not give you his running floor, but I like what I've seen so far from him in progressing forward. You know, Decker got involved last week. Delaney Walker is Delaney Walker. Rashard Matthews has proved yet again that he can be consistent. And you still have Delaney, and you still have, DeMarco Murray coming out of the backfield. I like Marcus Mariota this week. My two sits. One's obvious and Big Ben. He's been fucking garbage. He's so low on the QB list, I don't even want to look to where he is. The reason I mentioned him here is that people saw last week. Tough matchup. Was on the road. He had a decent game. Maybe, just maybe, he comes back. He's at home again against Cincinnati. Problem is Cincinnati is a pretty fucking good defense. They're the 7th best against quarterbacks this season. They have found their new way of running this offense, and that's through Le'Veon Bell. I mean, completely through Le'Veon Bell. This is going to cap Big Ben's upside. You have Antonio Brown, who's been a beast. That's obviously no question there. But you've had Martavis Bryant, who hasn't gotten it going at all. Juju Smith-Schuster, who has been great as a rookie, has been inconsistent because of snaps. You've seen Juju almost have now taken over that wide receiver 2 role from Bryant. But neither of them two have really solidified themselves as the true number 2 because none of them have really had great games. They both typically see an equal amount of targets, receptions. Juju's gotten touchdowns over the last few weeks, but they both really haven't given up much, which has in turn hurt Big Ben's numbers because he doesn't have the deep threat in Bryant. He shouldn't even be in most leagues. With bye weeks around the quarter and their matchups, I believe, getting a little bit better. I haven't looked too deep into that, but there's no reason to roster him. And if for some reason you got to start him, there's just better options elsewhere. Even a deeper option like Tyrod Taylor is better than Big Ben this week. My other QB sit of the week is going to be Phillip Rivers. He's my QB 18. He's playing against Denver. He hasn't thrown a 300-yard game against Denver since 2010. And these are his game averages since 2013. 215 yards, 1.6 touchdowns, and 1.1 interceptions. He doesn't kill you, but he doesn't help you. And when you are in bye weeks and you are trying to, survive bye weeks, you're trying to find a way to build out of a hole maybe that you have in your leagues, this isn't the right play to play this week. He was okay last week. He's been kind of inconsistent as I'm talking about Phillip Rivers here, but this is a Denver team that wants to bounce back after a shit show showing against the Giants Sunday night. They want to be able to keep up with the Chiefs. They got gifted a loss from the Chiefs, so this division doesn't get stretched out too long. With the Chargers kind of on their way up and the Raiders looking to get healthy and start building that, Denver wants to keep their 2 to 3 game lead over these two teams, the Chargers and Chiefs, or the Chargers and Raiders, excuse me, and they're going to want to play tough. They're going to want to beat Rivers at his own game. They're going to try to get to him early and often with Von Miller and things like that. And then what we saw from the Giants and them exposing Denver on Sunday night, excuse me, with Orland Stark, the Chargers may lean even heavier on Melvin Gordon again, as we saw in Week 1 before the game got kind of out of hand. So moving on to running backs. Running back starts. Derrick Henry's my RB17 this week. So DeMarco Murray's got a hamstring injury that kind of took him out of last week's game when the game was out of hand. That was against the Colts. That's against a bad defense for the most part, but an okay offense. Like I said, with Marcus Mariota, they get the Browns this week. They may not lean almost at all on Murray. If this game gets out of hand early, which it could definitely happen because the Browns have a shitty defense, have a shitty offense. They're going to start Deshaun Kaiser again this week. This could lean to where if Murray gets any sort of tightness, just looks the wrong way and looks unhealthy, they're going to move him out, put Derrick Henry in. Derrick Henry could feast. Mike Mularkey already came out and said that what we saw from them Monday night in terms of the split carries between Henry and Murray, he was happy with that. That's the system he wants to roll with, which means lower ceilings for both of them, but in a matchup that could feature more Henry than Murray, in my opinion, will. Murray's going to get that upside and could help win you this week as you're dealing with, buys and whatnot. My next, Joe Mixon, my RB16 this week. This one's a little harder to defend. It's not like, Pittsburgh's been terrible on defense. They've actually been very good defensively. But if there's one weakness you can exploit, it's their run defense. They're currently the 7th worst against running backs this season. And before you say, well, Dan, they shut down Kareem Hunt last week. He did absolutely nothing. And you're right, he did. He didn't do shit to him last week on the ground. In the passing game, he killed them, though. They're going to be like, well, Gio Bernard, he's their pass catching back. Well, since the Bengals have changed their offensive coordinator in week 3, or I guess after week 2, here's what the targets have been like for both Mixon and Hill. Mixon, 7 targets, 7 receptions. Gio, 8 targets, 7 receptions. 2 weeks ago against the Bills, prior to their bye week, Mixon didn't get a target and Gio got 2. But this is to say that Mixon is involved all over the running game. It's not just Gio with the passing and Hill on the ground and the Mixon gets his own. No, since this change even, these are the touches. The touches between Mixon, Hill, and Gio. Mixon has 57 touches. This is 21 in weeks 3 and 4, and in week 5 or weeks. The last 3 weeks have been 21, 21, and 15 for the last 3 games for the Bengals. Gio has been 15, Hill has been 19, including only 4 carries against the Bills in week 5. In week 4, excuse me. Not great. This is not what you want to see from. If you're, this is what you want to see, if you're a Mixon believer. And I believe that now that their bye week is done, that Mixon's going to step out and control and take over this offense moving forward. You're going to see less of Hill, less and less of Hill, and Gio may not even see as much in the passing game with Mixon being able to do both. And from what we've seen over the last 3 games, since their offensive coordinator changed for the 3 of them. So that's that. Moving on to my sits for running backs. He's been the darling of the last couple weeks. The darling, especially from Sunday night, and that's Orleans Darkwa. It's my RB31 this week. He's so flexible. It's just a really bad matchup. And I understand that he went off against the Broncos. And that, I think, is more of a flaw of Denver than it is of the Giants. Because the Giants are completely one-dimensional right now. They have no fucking receivers. They just have Evan Ingram and maybe a banged-up Sterling Shepard this week. Maybe. And the Seahawks may not have the greatest run defense of what we've seen so far in the year, but over the last 2 weeks, they've been the best against running backs. Over the last 4 weeks, they've been the 10th best against running backs. This defense is figuring their shit out. The Giants, like I said, are just one-dimensional, and they're going to exploit that. They were on a bye week last week, Seattle was, and they've had that extra week to figure out who they need to shut down. That's going to be this running game to make Eli throw to only Evan Ingram. One person. And I think they're going to do that. And also, Seattle has a lot better offense than Denver does. If Seattle jumps off to an early lead, the Giants may just abandon the running game altogether. Or may use Wayne Gallman, who has now seen more passing work than Shane Vereen, and has now maybe locked himself into that pass-catching role, and not Orleans Darkwa, not Shane Vereen, as I just mentioned before. So Wayne Gallman could end up being the better player this week than Orleans Darkwa. If you need to start him, I understand. Bye weeks, blow-up game against Denver, I get it. He's going to be a hot name. And he is definitely worth owning, and he should be picked up in all leagues. I just don't like him this week. Next one is Aaron Jones. He's my RB34 for this week. He looked good 2 weeks ago when T.Y. sat. Then he played against the Vikings defense. And then with Rodgers getting hurt, Jones was a completely non-factor. It was even Ty wasn't great, and though outside of a touchdown drop in the end zone, would have just had a shitty week as well. The Saints are actually pretty fucking good though. Over the last 4 weeks, they've been the 5th best against running backs. And I know Ty's banged up and Jones has been getting more of the running work, but this is the Saints offense who are at home who could end up killing the Packers, making this game completely out of reach, making all Ty, who's probably going to still see majority of the pass catching work. Jones may end up only getting a couple touches. Now I know after last week a lot of people may have kind of lost that luster on him. Jones may still not be started, but people still see the Saints. They still see the Saints as a defense that you could score points against. You saw it last week against the Lions, where it was just a lot of odd defensiveness. There's 5 defensive touchdowns in that game. That game could have gone either way. If it wasn't for Breeze and the turnovers from the Saints, the Lions could have been completely out of that game last week early, and it was early, and it wasn't for those turnovers, those odd turnovers that kept them in there. I don't expect to see Brett Hundley being able to do that, and I expect the Saints to take care of business early and often against this Rodgers-less Packers team. I understand if you got to start Jones. I do not like the matchup. I expect the game script to go well against them. Next, wide receiver starts Amari Cooper. I did mention him earlier, or I did mention his name when our podcast did our show's worth of starting sits. It dropped earlier today, so I'm not going to get too much into Amari Cooper, but he is playing against the Chiefs, for the second worst defense against receivers this season, and they're the third worst over the last 4 weeks, so you've seen that trend continue. Crabtree is now the new #1. I expect the defense to lean towards that and to make sure he gets stopped. Cooper saw his game kind of come back into form last week. 6 targets. He had 5 targets. He had 6 targets, caught 5 receptions for 28 yards, which is not great. This is actually a pretty bad game, but he had a big play taken away because of a holding penalty, which would have somewhat saved that day. The Chiefs are a bend but don't break kind of defense, meaning they're going to give up a lot of passing yards and a lot of yards just in general, but not a lot of touchdowns, which means that in performance, and especially PPR leagues, Cooper could have himself a kind of a get-right day. And because I think the Raiders are going to want to try to keep themselves in the hunt in this division and not ride this no playoff thing out, this could be a game that they feel like that they need to win, which is also tomorrow night. Next, Demaryius Thomas, my wide receiver 5 this week. This is Sanders' sidelined for at least a week, and we saw the amount of targets that Thomas got against the Giants after Sanders went down. Simeon likes to throw to 2 receivers, Sanders and Thomas. He likes to split those fairly evenly. When one's gone, the other one's going to see probably almost all of those targets. And Thomas is in line, I think, you see over 15 targets this week, which means that there's a very, 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 very good chance he's your #1 receiver just because of that volume alone. He could end up getting somewhere along the lines of 8 to 10 receptions, well over 100 yards, and even a chance or 2 at a touchdown against a Chargers defense that's getting better, but you can score on and throw on. My sets as times kind of run on here. I apologize. Deshaun Jackson, just like with Cooper, I did mention Deshaun Jackson in my sit section on the podcast. The Bills right now are 11th against receivers on the season. They're playing against a banged-up Jameis Winston. The Bucs, I don't think they're going to take deep shots. I know that Jackson's been getting involved in kind of the dunk and goal routes over the last couple weeks for the Bucs, but I expect them to kind of run through their running game. Doug Martin's looked very good over the last couple games, though the matchups have been more of in his favor, and the Bills are just a great defense all around overall. I expect this to be a little low scoring. They want to protect Winston, even with, let's say, Ryan Fitzmagic comes in. I expect them to lean heavily on Mike Evans and Cameron Brate and even Humphreys, which Winston built trust on from last year, and we're starting to see that as well. I still like Jackson on the season. I just don't like him in this matchup. For some reason, I didn't do another sit for receivers, so I do apologize there. So we're going to move on to tight ends, and that's my start. And it is Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham is playing against the worst defense against tight ends, and that's the Giants. They're coming off a bye week. They're going to want to reestablish themselves as a great offense, as a great team. They're going to want to put themselves in line to win this division, as the Rams, even the Cardinals now are kind of chomping at their heels here. Russell also wants to be able to get off to a good start as they begin this grind towards the end of the season and into the playoffs. Graham's are #2 guy here. I expect both him and Baldwin to have their way against a good Giants defense. I just really like Graham. I do. The Giants did fairly well against the Broncos tight ends last week, but those are the Broncos tight ends, which is pick your poison. You got to pick one, and hopefully it works. This week is Jimmy Graham, and that's gonna be mostly Jimmy Graham. The next start is going to be Austin Hooper from the Falcons. I gave you guys an easy one on Jimmy Graham. Obviously, you're going to start Graham. So I wanted to go a little bit deeper in tight ends. That's Austin Hooper is playing against, arguably, like I said earlier about Matt Ryan, against the worst defense in football, and that's the Patriots. The Patriots are really bad against tight ends as well as any other position that we can talk about. The thing is with Hooper is he's been a tad bit inconsistent to start the season. Over their last 2 games, which is weeks 4 and 6, he saw 7 targets in week 4 and 9 targets last week. Sanu hasn't been healthy, hasn't been able to get on the field. This has given Hooper a chance to kind of cement himself in this offense and kind of capitalize on those chances that he's had. And they're starting to see that. And they're going up against, like I said, the Patriots. This is a fantastic game for him to kind of have another mini breakout. And if you're going to roll out a tight end, which has been completely shit this entire year, you want to pick the tight end that's going up against a bad defense that can give you a lot of targets and a lot of chances. And I think Hooper's got that again this week. He's going to keep his hot train rolling and kind of cement himself as another mid to high streamer for tight ends. Moving on to sits. Obviously, the first one I picked is Coby Fleener because fuck Coby Fleener. The Packers have been really bad defensively this season. We've all seen that. With the loss of Rodgers, though, their defense could be even more exposed. But there's one thing that they've been consistently good at, and that's against tight ends. They're the second best against tight ends this season. Add the fact that Willie Snead's back, Ted Ginn has kind of cemented himself in this offense as not just a deep threat guy. Fleener has become more of just a body. He's not a great blocker. He's not getting used in the passing game. You can't trust him. Drop him and move forward. Even against plus matchups, he hasn't done shit. This is far from a plus matchup. Plus, the Lions scored 90. Plus, in a game that scored 90 points last week, he saw 1 fucking target. I'm done. I'm finished. I know a lot of you guys have been already. I'm cementing my stamp on it. He's fucking done. Next, this is more of a buyer's beware. There's a lot of the better matchups, or a lot of the better tight ends have decent matchups, and because of just how bad tight ends have been, you're going to roll them out anyways. I'm throwing a little buyer's beware on Cameron Brate. I still love Cameron Brate. The show loves Cameron Brate, especially Hopper. We have report our 40 back into the 40, our beer back into the 40, and we've drank it, and we have plenty of more beers and 40s for Cameron Brate. But just like Jackson, I said about them, they're going up against a really good Bills defense this week. The Bills are 4th best against tight ends on the season, 7th best over the last 4 weeks. This means that Brate may not have a high upside game. What you could be seeing here is even just a slightly lower floor. I'm projecting around maybe 2 to 4 receptions, maybe 30 to 40 yards. What you'll be praying for is a touchdown. You're going to play him. Just don't expect a whole lot from him. Moving on to defenses. I mentioned in the waiver wire show yesterday some of the defenses you guys could stream this week. I mentioned Philly against Washington, as Philly as a team has gotten a lot better overall, and just with the inconsistencies in the Washington's passing game. Kirk Cousins has been getting it going recently, but Philly can just flip this game on its side, and I don't hate them. I like them a little bit as a streaming option this week. Next is the Saints against Green Bay. I've mentioned why. Jets against Miami is kind of a deeper play. Miami's been completely terrible on offense, very inconsistent. And Jay Cutler always seems to be good for at least 1 or 2 picks. And the Jets have been actually pretty good, which is kind of weird. And I got one defense I don't really like this week that everyone may like, or it's just been a good defense overall, and that's Denver against the Chargers. I know I put Rivers in my sit section. That doesn't mean he's not going to give you a sick game. And also what we saw from the Giants against Denver was you can now maybe run on Denver. And Melvin Gordon actually would have had a decent game against the Broncos in week 1 had the game not got out of hand so quickly. I believe he started off that game with like a 20-25 yard scamper, and then it kind of just went off to the side there as the Broncos fucking laid the pipe against them. So I don't really like Denver as much this week. I have them ranked just outside the top 12 of my defenses, as both I think Chris and Nick have them in the top 5. I'm not a big fan. I would look elsewhere. I wouldn't just drop Denver's defense outright, but I just don't like the matchup this week. So that's all I have. I've taken up a lot of you guys' time. I do apologize for that. If you got any questions, tweet us out at us. We'll start compiling up stuff for the show on Sunday. And also, I'll be back on a little bit later tonight to give you guys a news rundown. All right, peace.